Oh, silly teacher, Mr. Grell. I said this book might take place in the 80s. It surely does not. It takes place in the 60s. It was written in 1967. So that's that. Oh man, talk about some older writing. I love it when the author S.E. Hinton says, Johnny couldn't say boo to a goose. I'm going to say that often. All right, you want me to finish up, and I totally understand. So we have about 6-7 pages, so probably under 10 minutes, or just about 10. Here we go. Well, Marcia said with finality, I'm glad he doesn't know us. I kind of admire him, Cherry said softly, so only I heard, and then we settled down to watch the movie. Oh yeah, we found out why they were without a car. They'd come with their boyfriends, but walked out on them when they found out the boys had brought some booze along. The boys had gotten angry and left. I don't care if they did, Cherry sounded annoyed. It's not my idea of a good time. To sit in a drive-in and watch people get drunk. You could tell by the way she said it that her idea of a good time was probably high class and probably expensive. They'd decided to stay and see the movie anyway. It was one of those beach party movies with no plot, no acting, but a lot of girls in bikinis and some swinging songs. So it was all right. We were all four sitting there in silence when suddenly a strong hand came down on Johnny's shoulder and another on mine, and a deep voice said, Okay, greasers, you've had it. I almost jumped out of my skin. It was like having someone leap out from behind a door and yell, Boo at you! I looked fearfully over my shoulder, and there was Two-Bit grinning like a cat. Glory, Two-Bit scares to death. He was good at voice imitations and had sounded for all the world like a snarling Soch. Then I looked at Johnny. His eyes were shut, and he was as white as a ghost. His breath was coming in smothered gasps. Two-Bit knew better than to scare Johnny like that. I guess he'd forgotten. He's kind of scatterbrained. Johnny opened his eyes and said weakly, Hey, Two-Bit. Two-Bit messed up his hair. Sorry, kid, he said. I forgot. He climbed over the chair and plopped down beside Marcia. Who's this, your great-aunts? Great-grandmother's twice removed, Cherry said smoothly. I couldn't tell if Two-Bit was drunk or not. It's kind of hard to tell with him. He acts boozed up sometimes even when he's sober. He cocked one eyebrow up and the other down, which he always does when something puzzles him or bothers him. Or when he feels like saying something smart. Shoot, you all look 96 to me. Marcia said something sassy back. Two-Bit stared at her admiringly. Man, you're a sharp one. Where do you two ever get to be picked up by a couple of greasy hoods like Pony and Johnny? We really picked them up, Marcia said. We're really Arabian slave traders, and we're thinking about shanghaiing them. They're worth 10 camels apiece, at least. 5, Two-Bit disagreed. They don't talk Arabian, I don't think. Say something in Arabian, Johnny Cake. Ah, cut it out, Johnny broke in. Daly was bothering them, and when he left, they wanted us to sit with them and to protect them. Against wisecracking greasers like you, probably. Two-Bit grinned, because Johnny didn't usually get sassy like that. We thought we were doing good if we could get him to talk at all. Incidentally, we don't mind being called greaser by another greaser. It's kind of playful then. Hey, where is old Daly anyway? He went hunting some action, booze or dames or a fight. I hope he don't get jailed again. He just got out. He'll probably find the fight, Two-Bit stated cheerfully. That's why I came over. Mr. Timothy Shepard and company are looking for whoever so kindly slashed their car's tires, and since Mr. Curly Shepard spotted Dallas doing it, well, does Daly have a blade? Not that I know of, I said. I think he's got a piece of a pipe, but he busted his blade this morning. Good. Tim will fight fair if Daly don't pull a blade on him. Daly shouldn't have any trouble. Cherry and Marcia were staring at us. You don't believe in playing rough or anything, do you? A fair fight isn't rough, Two-Bit said. Blades are rough. So are chains and heaters and pool sticks and rumbles. Skin fighting isn't rough. It blows off steam better than anything. There's nothing wrong with throwing a few punches. Socials are rough. They gang up on one or two, or they rumble each other with their social clubs. Us greasers usually stick together, but when we do fight among ourselves, it's a fair fight between two. And Daly deserves whatever he gets, because slashed tires ain't no joke when you've got to work to pay for them. He got spotted, too, and that was his fault. Our one rule, besides stick together, is don't get caught. He might get beat up, he might not. Either way, there's not going to be any blood feud between our outfit and Shepard's. If we needed them tomorrow, they'd show. If Tim beat Dally's head in, and then tomorrow asks us for help in a rumble, we'll show. Dally was getting kicks. He got caught. He pays up. No sweat. Rules of the street, my friends. Yeah, boy, Cherry said sarcastically. Real simple. Sure, Marcia said, unconcerned. If he gets killed or something, you just bury him. No sweat. You dig okay, baby? Two-Bit grinned and lit a cigarette. Anyone want a weed? I looked at Two-Bit admiringly. He sure put things into words good. Maybe he was still a junior at 18 and a half, and maybe his sideburns were too long. Maybe he did get boozed up too much, but he sure understood things. Cherry and Marcia shook their heads at his offering of cigarettes, but Johnny and I reached for one. Johnny's color was back and his breathing was regular, but his hand was shaking ever so slightly. A cigarette would steady it. Ponyboy, will you come with me to get some popcorn? Cherry asked. I jumped up. Sure. You all want some? I do, said Marcia. She was finishing the Coke Dally had given her. I realized then that Marcia and Cherry weren't alike. Cherry had said she wouldn't drink Dally's Coke if she was starving, and she meant it. It was the principle of the thing. But Marcia saw no reason to throw away a perfectly good, free Coke. Me too, said Two-Bit. He flipped me a 50-cent piece. Get Johnny some too, I'm buying. He added as Johnny started to reach into his jeans pocket. We went to the concession stand, and as usual, there was a line a mile long, so we had to wait. Quite a few kids turned to look at us. You didn't see a Kid Grease and a Sochi cheerleader together often. Cherry didn't seem to notice. Your friend, the one with the sideburns, he's okay? He ain't dangerous like Dallas, if that's what you mean. He's okay. She smiled, and her eyes showed that her mind was on something else. Johnny, he's been hurt bad sometime, hasn't he? It was more of a statement than a question. It was the Sochas, I said nervously, because there were plenty of Sochas milling around, and some of them were giving me funny looks, as if I shouldn't be with Cherry or something. And I don't like to talk about it either, Johnny getting beat up, I mean. But I started in, talking a little faster than I usually do, because I don't like to think about it either. It was almost 4 months ago. I had walked down to the gas station to get a bottle of pop and to see Steve and Soda, because they'll always buy me a couple of bottles and let me help work on the cars. I don't like to go on weekends because then there's usually a bunch of girls down there flirting with Soda. All kinds of girls. Sochas, too. I don't care too much for girls yet. Soda says I'll grow out of it. He did. It was a warmish spring day with the sun shining bright, but it was getting chilly and dark by the time we started for home. We were walking because we had left Steve's car at the station. At the corner of our block there's a wide open field where we play football and hang out, and it's often a site for rumbles and fistfights. We were passing it, kicking rocks down the street and finishing our last bottle of Pepsi, when Steve noticed something lying on the ground. He picked it up. It was Johnny's blue jeans jacket, the only jacket he had. Looks like Johnny forgot his jacket, Steve said, slinging it over his shoulder to take it by Johnny's house. Suddenly he stopped and examined it more carefully. There was a stain the color of rust across the collar. He looked at the ground. There were some more stains on the grass. He looked up and across the field with a stricken expression on his face. I think we all heard the low moan and saw the dark, motionless hump on the other side of the lot at the same time. Soda reached him first. Johnny was lying face down on the ground. Soda turned him over gently, and I nearly got sick. Someone had beaten him badly. We were used to seeing Johnny banged up. His father clobbered him around a lot. And although it made us madder than heck, we couldn't do anything about it. But those beatings had been nothing like this. Johnny's face was cut up and bruised and swollen, and there was a wide gash from his temple to his cheekbone. He would carry that scar all his life. His white t-shirt was splattered with blood. I just stood there, trembling with sudden cold. I thought he might be dead. Surely nobody could be beaten like that and live. Steve closed his eyes for a second and muffled a groan as he dropped on his knees beside Soda. Somehow the gang sensed what had happened. Two-Bit was suddenly there beside me, and for once his comical grin was gone and his dancing gray eyes were stormy. Derry had seen us from our porch and ran toward us, suddenly skidding to a halt. Dally was there, too, swearing under his breath and turning away with a sick expression on his face. Johnny? Soda lifted him up and held him against his shoulder. He gave the limp body a slight shake. Hey, Johnny Cake. Johnny didn't open his eyes, but there came a soft question. Soda. Yeah, it's me, Soda Pop said. Don't talk, you're going to be okay. There was a whole bunch of them, Johnny went on, swallowing, ignoring Soda's command. A blue Mustang full. I got so scared. He tried to swear, but suddenly started crying, fighting to control himself, then sobbing all the more because he couldn't. I had seen Johnny take a whipping with a 2x4 from his old man and never let out a whimper. That made it worse to see him break now. Soda just held him and pushed Johnny's hair back out of his eyes. It's okay, Johnny Cake, they're gone now. It's okay. Finally, between sobs, Johnny managed to gasp out his story. He had been hunting our football to practice a few kicks when a blue Mustang had pulled up beside the lot. There were 4 Socs in it. They had caught him, and one of them had a lot of rings on his hand. That's what had cut Johnny up so badly. It wasn't just that they had beaten him half to death. He could take that. They had scared him. They had threatened him with everything under the sun. Johnny was high-strung anyway, a nervous wreck from getting belted every time he turned around from hearing his parents fight all the time. Living in those conditions might have turned someone else rebellious and bitter, but it was killing Johnny. He had never been a coward. He was a good man in a rumble. He stuck up for the gang and kept his mouth shut good around cops. But after the night of the beating, Johnny was jumpier than ever. I didn't think he'd ever get over it. Johnny never walked by himself after that. And Johnny, who was the most law-abiding of us, now carried in his back pocket a 6-inch switchblade. He'd use it too if he ever got jumped again. They had scared him that much. He would kill the next person who jumped him. Nobody was ever going to beat him like that again. Not over his dead body. Whew! Yikes, that is a sentence. I had nearly forgotten that Cherry was listening to me, but when I came back to reality and looked at her, I was startled to find her as white as a sheet. All Socs aren't like that, she said. You have to believe me, Pony. Not all of us are like that. Sure, I said. That's like saying all you greasers are like Dallas Winston. I'll bet he's jumped a few people. I digested that. It was true. Dally had jumped people. He had told us stories about muggings in New York that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. But not all of us were that bad. Cherry no longer looked sick, only sad. I'll bet you think the Socs have it made. The rich kids, the West Side Socs. I'll tell you something, Pony Boy, and it may come as a surprise. We have troubles you've never even heard of. You want to know something? She looked me straight in the eye. Things are rough all over. I believe you, I said. We better get back out there with the popcorn or Two-Bit'll think I ran off with his money. We went back and watched the movie through again. Marcia and Two-Bit were hitting it off fine. Both had the same scattered brain sense of humor. But Cherry and Johnny and I just sat there looking at the movie and not talking. I quit worrying about everything and thought about how nice it was to sit with a girl without having to listen to her swear or to beat her off with a club. I knew Johnny liked it too. He didn't talk to girls much. Once while Dallas was in reform school, Sylvia had started hanging on to Johnny and sweet-talking him, and Steve got hold of her and told her if she tried any of her tricks with Johnny, he'd personally beat the tar out of her. Then he gave Johnny a lecture on girls and how a sneaking little broad like Sylvia would get him into a lot of trouble. As a result, Johnny never spoke to girls much, but whether that was because he was scared of Steve or because he was shy, I couldn't tell. I got the same lecture from Two-Bit after we'd picked up a couple of girls downtown one day. I thought it was funny, because girls are one subject even Derry thinks I use my head about. It really had been funny, because Two-Bit was half crocked when he gave me the lecture. Man, I lost my spot, guys. Ah, there it is. Because Two-Bit was half crocked when he gave me the lecture, and he told me some stories that about made me want to crawl under the floor or something. But he'd been talking about girls like Sylvia and the girls he and Dally and the rest picked up at drive-ins in downtown. He never said anything about Soci girls. So I figured it was all right to be sitting there with them, even if they did have their own troubles. I really couldn't see what Socias would have to sweat about. Good grades, good cars, good girls, Madras and Mustangs and Corvettes. Man, I thought, If I had worries like that, I'd consider myself lucky. I know better now. Awesome last line.